graphic novel was a prequel to the movie, right?
Yeah.
And you got to meet some of the cast of the original movie at Crypticon this
yeah,
year. What was that like?
It was interesting. Got to meet Adrienne Barbeau, which was very neat, very exciting.
Well, what do you think are the crucial elements of a good horror tale?
I'm real conservative in terms of what I like in horror. I don't like, we were discussing earlier, I don't like zombie movies. I don't like trite horror too much. I almost gravitate, and I wouldn't say that I've done this in my work so far, but I would like to someday, but I do have a lot of respect for horror that is almost so scary that it's an undertaking to endure it. And you know, and I also have a really wide range of what I consider horror. I mean, I consider the first 20 minutes of Saving Private Ryan one of the best horror films I've ever seen. And it just is. I mean, war is horrible and scary, and the first 20 minutes is so viscerally frightening that I just can't think of. I mean, I like that plus the supernatural element to it. There's all kinds of different ways you can approach horror. I have not much of a stomach for funny horror, although I appreciate it, I respect it. American Werewolf in London is one of my favorite films of all time. I guess ever since 9/11, I have had a hard time laughing at violence and blood unless it's, you know, used in kind of a more serious way. And it's cool. It's just, I would almost just say it's more of a hang-up of mine. But as far as like what goes into good horror, it's just whether it's scary. I like the idea of build up and payoff. I like the traditional idea of introducing something very mysterious and then at some point giving a little bit of, enough of an explanation to keep you interested. I think for as far as genre goes, Poltergeist is a really great formula for a horror film. It's a little too Spielbergy, but I rewatched it recently and really enjoyed it. I was surprised. I didn't think it was going to hold up, and I think it's got all the right elements for that. To me, is a good, fun horror story.
Well, a lot of our, you know, customers, of course, are comics fans, and they want to break into being a cartoonist. So, how did you do it?
Well, you know, first of all, it's a good question how people do it these days, simply from scratch. Although, you know, I have a friend who sent his stuff via email to the submissions guy at Marvel, and they've stayed in really good contact, and he's encouraging him. I think that's really cool and encouraging because, I mean, for me, when I first got into comics in the mid-90s, it was easy to get your work shown. Once you got work, you had a long ways to go, but like you would go to San Diego Comics Con or you'd go to the Portland Comic Con, there was an editor there, and you'd show them your portfolio. And it was just that simple. And sometimes there'd be a line, and sometimes they were bored and were really excited to talk to you. But either way, you always knew that you could get in to show your work at Marvel, at Dark Horse, at DC, whoever else. Nowadays, it's so complicated. Like there's kind of like, I think in San Diego, there's a lottery system for DC Comics these days. Anyways, the point is that since I had already worked in comics, I had connections. I knew, of course, I think I knew most of the people by a first name basis at Dark Horse, and was obviously very good friends with them, and even some people at DC and Marvel that I had known from early amateur days. So I always knew that when I was in animation, I always knew I wanted to go back to comics. And I always knew that I could make an email or a phone call and get my work in front of someone's nose for them to take a look at it.
So basically the answer is networking.
It's networking, and I guess going to a Comic-Con that's probably smaller than San Diego. I think San Diego is too big and crazy and probably too expensive for you know, a bottom rung amateur to try to get their work looked at, especially if at that point you're just going to get feedback. So, you know, I mean, first of all, you want to show your stuff to professionals who are going to say, they're going to tell you two things. They're going to say, this is amazing, and you need to show it to, Bob Schreck at DC and tell them I sent you, which will give them weight. Or they'll say, well, this isn't quite there, but if you work on this, this, and this, then I think you got a shot. And then next time you come back, I'll tell you to go talk to so-and-so. Or they might tell you to go home and never come back. But that happened to a lot of artists who went on to be really, like, I think Steve Rude had a really hard time breaking in for years and years, and now, of course, he's one of the more respected pencilers in the industry. Pencilers, painters.
What advice would you give to aspiring artists in terms of honing their craft for comics? What should they do to prepare to be a comics artist? Tracing paper?
Yeah, well, no. Boy, that's tough. One thing I left out that I did do that helped me a lot is when I first decided to get into the industry, I went around and asked other artists if they were looking for an assistant. And I did have pages that showed that I could at least draw. And the people who hired me at that point all saw something in me that said, well, someday this guy's can probably go on to actually be professional, but he's not quite there yet. But in the meantime, I can hire him to draw backgrounds for me or erase pages or anything. And that way you get into a studio and you can see what they're doing and pick their brains a little bit. One-on-one is awesome. One-on-one with another artist is really helpful, especially if they're a professional. I know at Periscope Studios they have an intern program that's down here in Portland. But beyond that, it's really tough because there's so many balls in the air that you have to juggle. I mean, you have to really know. The figure drawing alone for comics is so difficult. I poured through many anatomy books. I taught myself up and down about perspective. I had a lot of the tricks of the craft down, and then it was another hurdle to figure out how to tell a story. And I always felt that animation was where because I was doing storyboarding and animation, and that was a tough hurdle for me to make the adaptation. And luckily, they let me make a lot of mistakes. But that always I felt was where I learned how to tell a story. And in particular, I worked on a television show, a comedy television show called The PJs, and I learned how to tell a joke. And to me, that's the most fundamental form of storytelling. Because if you don't laugh, if the audience doesn't laugh when everybody sees your joke, and my drawings would be on a big screen attached to a soundtrack, and it was humiliating when no one laughed. And somehow, like, things that you could think about and overthink, like, suddenly became really clear. When no one laughed, you were like, oh, that's wrong, and now I know why. It's just like a really fast learning curve. But I mean, beyond that, just learning, and also, subjecting yourself to all kinds of stuff. It's almost like learn how to draw really well. That just never hurts. I don't care what anyone says. And it's almost like preparing to be a writer, like just try to learn as much about everything around you as you possibly can, and get out of your house and meet other people. That's always a good idea.
Well, for my last question, I have, what are you going to be for Halloween this year?
A priest. I'm lazy.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Todd Herman.
Excellent.
He's got Fall of Cthulhu Nemesis coming out soon. Thank you.